What I don't get, and what strikes me, so I'm from Oklahoma, and tornado there, the tornado watches are, it's like an art form. Everything is beautifully orchestrated, and you know exactly what's going on. And then in Ohio, with the tornadoes here happen around like really early in the morning for the most part, which is extremely dangerous because most people are asleep, and you don't know jack on what's going on. The news don't cover it. The tornado sirens are going off, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do? Is it near me? I don't have a Doppler radar. How can I do this?
Oh,
it's
that's
awful.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's my rant.
You know what they need? They need a tornado watch AI, and that would just solve all their problems.
Hey, I like that segue.
So I guess we should probably kick off on there.
Yes, go for it.
So welcome to Splitting the Veil, episode 5. My name is Jordan. I have a YouTube channel called The Exalted March.
And my name is Caitie. I have a YouTube channel called Ghildirthalen.
And so this is our podcast. If this is your first one, we've got a few under our belt now. We generally talk about Bioware related topics, mainly Dragon Age and Mass Effect. One day, who knows, we might be talking about Anthem. But for the most part, we tend to stick to Dragon Age lore, Mass Effect sort of themes and issues within the series. Today, as we segue in from talking about tornado warning systems to artificial intelligence, we kind of thought it might be an interesting topic to discuss AI, artificial intelligence, within the Mass Effect universe. It's obviously one of the central themes, one of the main themes of the series. And this is kind of an impromptu topic. We kind of came up with this topic last minute, but I always feel like there's a lot of juice that you can get out of this because AI and sci-fi is such a massive topic overall. Mm-hmm. And there's certain things that I really like about how Mass Effect did it. Although I am kind of stuck. I'm trying to sit here and like vamp and think of like, if there was a tornado warning AI, how would it go wrong? And I'm like, it's pretty good. Like there's no like, hey, we created synthetics to wipe out human life every 50,000 years so they don't get wiped out by synthetics. I don't think is there that loophole with tornadoes? Like how does a tornado warning AI go wrong?
I guess the only way you can make it go wrong is that it suddenly just has unlimited access to like the sirens. So you like just for shits and giggles, like imagine if you got like a prankster like AI and just turns it on at random times. So that's I think the worst. Or if it just doesn't do its job and so everyone dies from a tornado, that would probably be the worst actually. The most obvious answer, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Somebody forgot to change the batteries.
It's taking its day off. It's like, no thanks. I kind of want to catch up on my soaps.
Or what if it just becomes really lonely and it just figures that the only way to get more AI friends is to just mess up on purpose, and then that way somebody thinks, well, what we need is a second AI.
Oh, okay. It just wants an AI lover.
It's like the Angaran AI. It just wants to be BFFs with Sam.
That's true. So what series AI do we want to start with? Do we want to start with like the OG trilogy, or do we want to start with Andromeda?
I think that's kind of that's one of the most interesting things is comparing the two, because before we started recording we were talking about kind of the difference between the original trilogy take on AI and the one that we get in Andromeda. It is a little bit derivative in Andromeda, but I do feel like there was more richness. There was a little more. I think the original trilogy kind of subverted expectations a bit more. So, I mean, I guess the one to start off with is EDI, right? Like she kind of feels like the quintessential sort of the one that everyone got most attached to, I think. Well, there's also Legion, of course, but...
Yeah. The differences I see between them, though, is Legion, I think the fans collected as like, oh, look at this cute little pumpkin. Like, we're going to take care of him and make him safe. And then EDI was kind of like, yeah, my girl, you get Joker. Like, there's a difference in fan opinion, where Legion was a cute little child learning, and then EDI was like... It felt more adult in a way, which I hope so, because she was looking at porn, but like...
I never got the whole collect Legion as a pet thing, man. I sold him to Cerberus for 10,000 credits just to see what would happen one time, and I think another time I shot him out the... I think I shot him out the airlock also.
Who are you?
It's like...
What?
It's one of those great things of like, by the time you're on your 9th playthrough of Mass Effect 2, you're just like... Sure, why not shoot him out the airlock, see what happens?
I can't diss you for that because I have totally given Fenris back to Daenerys one time just to see what would happen.
Uh-huh. I've let the Aeroshock take Isabella.
Oh, yeah. All the time. Fuck her, man. No. But, okay, so if it was just, I thought you meant like on your first playthrough, you're like, fuck this piece of junk.
No.
But, okay. A little bit more forgivable.
That first conversation, though, with Legion, I mean, that is one of the, I think, one of the most iconic, or at least certainly for me personally, one of the most memorable moments in the Mass Effect series when you start talking to a Geth. That's kind of one of my favorite subversions of your expectations. Like, it goes from 0 to 100 real quick. Like, you all of a sudden, like, there's a Geth shooting at you. It has a piece of N7 armor. It's talking, and all of a sudden, you're like, within the span of 20 minutes, you're having like a full conversation with a Geth. Whereas there was really no indication that the Geth were anything other than just like cannon fodder enemies from Mass Effect 1. And so all of a sudden, like, you're talking with Legion and it has a name and it's like really cool and making like scriptural references and like Earth human centric references. And you're like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? I don't know. I just thought that was one of the, I don't know that there's anything similar to that as far as like surprises around artificial intelligence anywhere in Andromeda.
Yeah, the Andromeda ones. So the only two that I could remember is, are we gonna count Avina? Like that's not really AI.
I was thinking, well, I was actually not thinking Avina, but I kind of felt like Virgil, right? Because the Prothean VIs feel way smarter than like the human or Asari VIs. They almost seem like AI, so I didn't know whether or not to count them either. I
don't know. Because like in how I remember the series, because I am not the Mass Effect lore nerd like you are. You are the king here. But how I remember it is that there are like two types of AIs. There's the ones that are just like kind of like Avina, where it has a certain programming and it's limited to that. And then there's ones like EDI and the Geth, which actually have almost like does this unit have a soul, essentially? So I would almost count like Avina not towards that. I don't know about the one I don't even remember the one you're referring to, the Virgil.
That's if I'm getting the name right, I believe I am. That's the one where when you are on Ilos and it's Mass Effect 1 and you're going towards
that's like near the end of the game.
Yeah, right at the end when you're trying to stop Saren from taking the back door into the Citadel and you get stopped by a VI, and it's a Prothean VI that was managing all of the stasis pods, the last remaining Protheans on Ilos. And that's the base. It's kind of like a little bit of like not Deus Ex Machina, but it's definitely an info dump where you basically get all of the revelations around what the beacons are for and what Saren's actually been doing and what the keepers are for on the Citadel. So yeah, and so that's like, that is described as a virtual intelligence, as a VI, but it's like, okay, Avina's a VI and she's really stupid, and Virgil's a VI, Prothean, and he's like, seems like an infinite intelligence. So it seems more like they are more like true AIs.
Okay.
Versus like, Avina, and then EDI, which is the very interesting thing about what we learn about EDI, is she started off as a virtual intelligence. She is the Alliance military VI on Luna, on Earth's moon. There's that one side quest from ME1 where it's not very interesting from a story standpoint initially. It's basically just, I don't know if you remember, it's just a bunch of rocket turrets. Like you basically have to say, you get a distress signal, like there's an Alliance base on the moon, it's going nuts, like we need Shepard to go and check it out. I was so excited for the first time I played it because I thought we were going to get to see like more Earth content. And basically you're just on the moon, you clear out those 4 bases that are filled with fucking rocket turrets. It's like, it's so impossible to beat on Insanity or whatever. And then when you destroy the console, it has the binary. The binary code comes up, and of course somebody figured out that the binary was HELP, help, and it was this VI that had gained sentience. And then later, I think it's not until Mass Effect 3 when we learn that Cerberus retrieves that VI from the Luna base and develops it into EDI.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's really interesting. Wasn't there okay, so in somehow I bring it back to Andromeda. There's the side quest where like Amina gets fucked up or something, and she's like going down with AI, they're gonna kill us all. And then you do the side quest and you find out it's some woman who is somehow related to the original series and can't remember what, who like accidentally killed a bunch of people with AI or something, and so now she's trying to like kill Sam to free us.
No, I want to remember, and I actually have only done that side quest in Andromeda once, I think, because I think my second playthrough I'm kind of stalled on right now. But if I'm not mistaken, her connection to the original trilogy was through the Overlord DLC.
Oh, that's it. And I didn't play that, so I don't remember it. That's why.
And I can't remember if the main guy who's hooked into the Overlord thing, if she had some direct relation to him, or I think her son was one of the other people in the Overlord project. David, I think, was the name of the actual subject in Overlord. David Archer, and this one, I think what we learn in that side quest is that there's another person that was in that, and I think that's her son, and that's why she's all down with AI.
Which now we're just talking about Andromeda again. I felt, even though I have not played the Overlord DLC, I felt like it was kind of silly that the way to fix this was just take Sam and like fix the dude's back. Like, I don't know, I felt like too easy. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. No, it's shallow, and it's also kind of a letdown in the sense that the Overlord DLC, from a gameplay standpoint, it's not that interesting, but especially like the final scene and like the implications of it, of like using a human sort of host to sort of like help power cognitive abilities of this sort of networked AI. That's really interesting, and it's tragic, and it's like brutal to look at that final scene and how emotional it is. And so the connection to Overlord DLC is cool, but it's so minor, and like you said, the actual scene itself is just like Omni tool button press. Sam fixed you, and everybody. So it's kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, which we were talking about it earlier. The differences between Sam and EDI. I think we both felt that like Sam felt like more computer-esque and perfect and kind of a little bit boring. And granted, there was like that whole joke aspect, but it kind of like was like, oh, aren't you cute, pat pat. But like EDI felt more like a person to me. Like, and Legion too. Like, they were people, they had questions, they didn't know things, and they had flaws. Where I feel like Sam, like, even though they had questions, we answered them, and they're like, gotcha, now I know everything about it.
Yeah, no, I think they both did, right? Like, even Legion kind of, I wouldn't say he struggled with it, but there is that great scene between him and, well, there's multiple great scenes between him and Tali. Obviously because of the Geth Quarian situation, but like especially the one where it's in Mass Effect 2, I believe, where you have to have a really high Paragon or Renegade check to not lose one of their loyalty, if I'm not mistaken. That's an interesting one, man. Like, I remember the first time, I think for whatever reason, I didn't have the Paragon or Renegade high enough to pass the check. And I just went with like a regular option that was like lower left or something like that. And it's crazy because I'd never seen that dialogue out in Legion. Like the fucking claws come out. Like the fucking the Geth claws come out, and he says something to the effect of like my civilization will not be destroyed again or something. Like, I had never seen the non like red or blue Paragon Renegade option because I'd always had enough points to check it. And so when I went with the regular dialogue option, like just seeing that dialogue come out of Legion, I'm like, oh no, I kind of do get it. Like, I think Tali might be right. I think we need to shoot this guy out the goddamn airlock. I think it was on the next playthrough that I was like, no, let's just see what happens if we shoot him out the airlock.
Yeah. So on the Geth versus Quarian, do you have an opinion on which one's better, or they're both, or what?
I mean, I do think obviously that they take a good amount of time to make it even and to make it, so that people have the debate. Obviously, that's what makes it interesting, is that it's not black and white. But I do tend to fall, and I always have kind of fallen on the side of like, kill all the fucking robots, like, don't trust them.
I gotta say I'm the same, because Tally is like my favorite character. I'm really weird. I have very specific likes when it comes to my female characters, and Tally just hits all the marks, and I love her to death. And so if for some reason even though when I played the like Legion's last mission, I had enough to like make a truce in my mind. Is like, if I fuck this up, Tally's winning. Like, I'm sorry, dude. You do have a soul, and I'm gonna murder your civilization, but Tally's my girl. I can't just not.
Oh, that's amazing. Like, yes, you have a soul, and I'm gonna send it straight to robot hell.
Sorry, man. Nothing personal. Like, I can't just not side with Tally. She is my her and Aveline are like my personification of what I feel like I am. So I need to protect them.
How does Legion? How many ways can Legion die? You can stab him, right? But then Tally shoots him with a shotgun if you don't stab him, right?
I don't even remember. The only one I remember you definitely can do is at the very, very end, you shoot him if he doesn't stop the uploading the code to the rest of his buddies.
Oh, and you can shoot him multiple times, right? With the Renegade interrupt?
I never did the Renegade interrupt, so I don't know. But probably. That would be very Renegade.
Yeah, I think I remember. It's either him or... No, Morden is only once. I think it's with Legion where it's like... Renegade interrupt, and I was playing it. I normally play with controller, so it's like right trigger, and then another one comes up, right trigger again, like right trigger again. I think you can shoot him like 3 times.
Oh wow! I wonder what happens if you don't do all 3 times.
That's another interesting one. I think maybe Tally jumps in and shotguns him.
Maybe. I don't know. Okay, I have actually a random story about does this unit have a soul? Do you have an Amazon Echo?
I do not, but I've played around with a couple of them, yeah.
So, fun fact, I don't have one either, but my parents do. Fun facts, if you ask the thing, does this unit have a soul, it will answer back Keela Salai.
Oh, and that's crazy.
Isn't it cute? So, my parents got one, and I was over for the holidays, and I was like, oh, I want to try this out. Like, Mom, Dad, check this out. So I asked, does this unit have a soul? Which they don't know anything about Mass Effect. And it just pipes back Keela Salai. So me and my husband are like, oh, it's so cute. And then my mom starts freaking out. She's like, is that demonic speak? I'm like, no, Mom. So like I'm sitting there trying to explain why this is a really cute and impactful moment for their little Amazon Echo. And Mom's like, well, that's just weird. Why would they choose some weird alien made-up language? I'm like, okay, Mom.
Oh, that is so... You know what? I think I want to say that we got my parents an Echo as well, like a couple Christmases ago, and now I'm going to have to try that, because their reaction, my mom's reaction would be the exact same.
Please do it. One, because it's really cute just to hear it say, Keela Salai, and then 2, like, this parents, like, overreacting about fantasy elements is the best. Like, my mom... When I was getting married, my mom was very against D&D because it's of the devil. And so I had been playing for a couple of years, and when I was getting married, I sat down my mom and was like, Mom, I think it's time to know how much of a big fucking nerd your child is. So I sat down and was like, I've been doing D&D for a couple of years, and she was like, Caitie, why would you do this? And you ain't going to church? I'm like, no, Mom. It was... I broke my mom's heart. She got over it quickly, but it was...
So, was it a D&D wedding? Is that why you told her?
No. It was just kind of like, that was the last moment. Like, it kind of fit into the mood of the moment. Like, it's the last time I'm their little girl type of bullshit.
I gotcha.
So it was just kind of like, oh, by the way, here's everything I was doing behind your back kind of thing. So, which was like, I played D&D. I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't doing anything bad. Like, I played D&D. Like, and that was, my mom was like, no, what? Why?
I've always told my parents similar things. I'm like, you realize that you're lucky your child's a nerd, right? Like, I stay inside, I play video games.
That's what I think that's what Mom eventually calmed down about. She's like, well, I guess if that's the worst thing. So,
right.
But I don't know, parents, like, man. How do we get to parents to AI? I'm sorry, that's my fault.
Well, here, I'll bring it back. I'll go, look, Mom, Dad, the worst thing I've ever done is I shot my robot friend Legion 3 times. Not once, 3 times.
And I liked it.
So Legion, yeah. So like, yeah, I guess what got us started on that was like the flaws of kind of Legion and EDI as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. It was always interesting to kind of see Legion, especially in that moment too. Like, it's not that he's evil, but yeah, pushed into a corner, like the Geth claws come out, and sort of in a way, it's like it's scary because he's an AI, he is a robot, and he's asserting like, no, you will not kill me, you will not kill my people. But oddly enough, that's like the most human or organic reaction that any alive thing has, is like self-preservation and backed into a corner, like I'm gonna fight for my life. And EDI kind of has a similar thing, I guess, going back to her as her VI origin. But in a way, I think EDI kind of has that one conversation in ME3 where she's just like, what is it? Like, she's talking about altering her self-preservation instincts to potentially include self-sacrifice for the crew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't remember any of this.
Yeah. So I don't remember it specifically, but I love those conversations that you have. Like, there's multiple ones in ME3 where she's like, Shepard, I need to talk, and it's like one of these esoteric sort of philosophical questions about consciousness, and like those. That's some of my favorite content period around AI, because it seems malleable, and she seems like a very reasonable AI who is very cognizant of her limitations. She's sort of different from Legion in that sense, in that Legion is like, no, this is what I am. I'm not you. I'm not organic, and why would I be? Like, I'm Geth or Geth, and he doesn't really have as much question about it. EDI is like this great plot device or character microcosm where, as the audience, as the player, you just get to sort of like, I don't know, it's like those sidebar conversations are like a weird loophole to just have nerdy conversations about AI. Mm-hmm. And there is one where she's talking about like, I have self-preservation instincts, and they're supposed to just be like strictly, she has safeguards put in by Cerberus so she doesn't go crazy, but she's talking about like, should I change sort of some of these safeguards and protocols to include sacrificing myself for the crew, or something to that effect, which I thought was a mind-blowing moment, because I'm just like, wow, like that is something sort of inherently, I don't know, familial or human or organic, and I thought that was a really cool thing to watch from her. I don't know.
Also, her relationship with Joker, like I always thought that was really cute. My husband's favorite character was Joker, and I liked EDI a lot, so we were like, oh, aren't we cute? But although I enjoyed the relationship between EDI and Joker a lot, he loved it. He was all over it. He like just got a big kick out of it. So in a weird way, it kind of reminds me of, have you heard of this movie coming out called Shape of Water?
I have not.
It's the new Guillermo del Toro movie, and like Tumblr is like having a fit about, like in a good way, having a fit about it, because it's essentially Beauty and the Beast, where it's this woman goes in, it's this deaf woman, and she like is going to be working for the government or something, and she falls in love with the fish man. That's essentially the movie. So it's this not typically human thing, or something that's not really seen as a human, and a human falls in love with it. It's just that general story. And I have always had a soft spot for that kind of stuff, and I think you really get a sense of that with Joker and EDI. Joker, I think, had a thing for EDI before the body, and it's I think it's a wonderful love story, and I'm so glad they included that, because it is interesting to think about, like, their relationship. How is that going to, his brittle bone disease, how is that going to work with mega ultra powerful EDI?
Right.
And then also, but it's, I kind of also want to segue this into, like, the original series did so many interesting things with AI, like falling in love with it. Is it actually a soul? It's like the collective mind and becoming its own people kind of thing. When they were going into Andromeda, what new story were they going to tell? Because it seems like a lot of the AI that we saw with Sam and the one on Veil-Ep, it kind of just felt rehashed a little bit. Like, Sam kind of just felt like a toned-down EDI a little bit, and the one on Veil-Ep just kind of like an angry a Legion, but without its people behind it. Like, it didn't feel new. It didn't feel exciting. It just kind of felt like, oh, all right.
Yeah, I think that's Sam felt like everything about AI from the original trilogy with all the holes plugged up. It was like all of the AI stuff from the original trilogy, but every time there was a legitimate cause for concern in the original trilogy, it's like, well, AI can't really understand organic life, and so it won't have any need for organic life. And they're like, no, Sam is symbiotic with Ryder, so it understands humanity and no problem. It's like they just plugged up all of the interesting complications, I felt. And that's exactly what makes AI interesting, is the complications, is the fact that it could legitimately be a bad thing, or it could legitimately be the next step forward in human evolution, etc.
I did feel like they, like we were talking with Overlord, they like hinted at it and like kind of gently caressed the idea and then walked away from it. Like, oh, aren't you worried that this thing is connected to your head? And like when you're in the Archon base and it like kills you momentarily and everyone's like, that seems worrisome, but like they don't actually ever do anything about it. Like, I think like if Andromeda was to get a sequel, I'd be really interested to have like what happens when Sam gets really pissed off at you.
Right.
And that would be interesting to see, like, perhaps if you killed the AI in Veil-Ep, maybe, like, Sam's like, why did you, like, that thing is like me. Why did you do that? And, like, you actually get some repercussions for it. Because I felt like killing the AI versus saving the AI in Veil-Ep, it was just kind of like, whatever. So...
actually, I mean, as you're talking, you just, like, sparked, like, a crazy idea in my head as you were talking about what happens when Sam gets really mad. That is a phenomenal concept. And it actually, for me, it sparked this idea of essentially that Sam is like a party member, even though you can't, like, well, no, you can. You can have those little side conversations in your cabin with Sam. And, of course, we know that in Bioware games, one of the most interesting, like, impactful, dramatic moments that are part of the series in Mass Effect and Dragon Age is when you have the opportunity to choose whether or not you kill a squad mate, a party member.
Yes.
And I think in that moment with Legion is so interesting because he is up against the wall and he is sort of faced with his own survival. So on two levels. One, how interesting would it have been if you were able to kill Sam by like removing him, like taking him out of your brain?
But then you would have died though.
Well, that's true. That from a lore standpoint, it is kind of locked in that way in Andromeda. But I do remember in pre-release, like especially on our Mass Effect subreddit, I was one of the people, and there were many people who were saying, AI integration, synthesis ending, all of the stuff that Cerberus was trying to do. That was a major point of contention in the original trilogy, pro and con. We should definitely have the option at some point in Andromeda. We were hoping to say, no, I don't want this thing in my body and have a way to get rid of it.
Yeah.
They didn't even come close to that. There at no point are you really even able to express that much doubt over it, which I know a lot of players felt frustrated with. So, yeah, number one, how interesting would it be if there was an opportunity to remove Sam and get rid of him and watch him sort of fight for his own survival? But two, and this is really sort of like oddly philosophical, but interesting from a thematic standpoint, what if there were some sort of situation that sort of caused Ryder to have to face his or her diminished ability without Ryder, but that they had a moral obligation to remove Ryder? Something to the effect of, I don't know.
Do you mean Sam or?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Sam. It's a Ryder having to remove Sam. Something equivalent to a destroy option at the end of Mass Effect 3. Something that would cause Sam to have to be deactivated or destroyed, but it would save a bunch of other people. And the player has to make that choice.
That now I'm like imagining like somehow at the end, what's the like inverted planet? Is that the Meridian? Where it's like the planet where the part where you live on's on the inside.
Yeah, Meridian.
Meridian. Okay, so maybe like the Meridian like isn't powered up completely and needs that extra bit of power, or like maybe like the Meridian was primed to be like an AI needs to take care of this place, but doing so you have to sacrifice yourself because Sam needs to be the one to be the AI to control like the weather patterns or something like that, where you're like, right. Oh shit, for this thing to work out, for my people to have a home, I have to die. Or like, I don't want to do this. We can easily, we have plenty of planets we can go live on and share with the Jaws race and Garin. So I think that would have been a really cool ending, and that probably would have given a lot more weight, because I do feel like even though I do like the happy endings and I like having the choice of happy endings, Mass Effect Andromeda just ended up being like, well, everything's all right now. Hooray. Like, it was Boy Scout. It was the Boy Scout ending. So
it was the it was the Boy Scout ending, or I don't know how to. So I felt like they were really trying to go for like a really triumphant Avengers-esque sort of like, we're super cool beyond anything that's ever been this cool.
Yeah. Which, like, at the same time, like, having done, like, all the side quests to get, like, the good ending where the ship captain survives, that was, like, the only difference between the endings. It's kind of like, yay, everyone survived, I did it. But after the end, I was like, I forgot about it. Like, I'm done. But I don't forget the Mass Effect's original ending, where I just kind of felt like laid there for a while and go, oh God, what have I done? Yeah. Which I think that's what sticks with you. That's why people are going to remember the original series more than the OG series. And like, even in the Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, like, I'll admit I don't remember 2 as much because I did everything right. I succeeded. But in the first game, I didn't know the choice. I even forget what the choice is now, but I accidentally killed the Galactic Council. And I was like, oh, shit. Whoops.
Yeah, that big choice at the end of ME1 is not entirely clear when they're like, send the Alliance fleet or send the Alliance fleet? Like, what?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. The way I remember it, like, to me, it read like either save a whole bunch of civilians or save the Galactic Council or something like that, or like save this one tiny ship versus a bunch of ships. So I was like, oh, well, I'll choose the bunch of ships. There's more people. But then it was like, oh, but those were the important people. And then like the rest of the series, they kept saying like, oh, but you killed the Galactic Council, you big asshole. I'm like, I thought I saved a whole bunch of other people. Isn't that more important? I don't know. Which you mentioned synthesis, so now I want to talk about it.
Yes.
What was your canon ending for Mass Effect?
Destroy.
Red, blue, or green?
Destroy. I've never picked anything but destroy. And in all my, as many playthroughs as I've done so many playthroughs. I've shot Grunt out the airlock. I've shot Legion out the airlock.
I want to believe those are the same ones, and that Shepard just really liked using the airlock.
Yes, he did. He was a motherfucker. I mean, he was just... I remember my head role play was because I thought that would be interesting. Like, at some point in the multiverse of Mass Effect, there would have to be a Shepard who was just like, why did you bring me back? Like, why did you bring me back? You know,
I wanted to die.
Yeah, he's just like, fuck you. I was ultra renegade. I was a bastard. I deserve to die. He never heals the facial scars. His face is fucked up. He's just angry. So he's just like, yep, out the airlock, out the airlock, out the airlock. But yeah, even in all of those playthroughs, I was like, no, destroy, over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. So I completely agree with you. My opinion on it was blue felt like, I'm just going to go color coding here because that's what it kind of was. But the blue was the control ending, and that always felt like a defeat of like what your whole goal in the game was. Like, it was definitely the, oh, I want power, I want to control the Reapers. But to me, it was like, no, my whole goal was to get rid of the Reapers. Why would I want to be king of the Reapers? That seems stupid. Yeah. The green ending, I thought, Jinx, my dog's barking. Okay. the green ending, it for me, like, it everything wrapped up all nicely. And my husband chose actually that thing to begin with. But, dog? Anyway,
that's okay. He's just translating the podcast for dogs.
That's true. I think the mailman came, so now she's all caruffly about it. But anyway, the green, to me, I couldn't pick the green ending because I'm going to Jinx. I couldn't pick the green ending because it just felt wrong to give people this AI system without their consent. That, like, even though it was better for them and, like, everyone turned out all happy and better, it just felt weird to me to force this thing upon the entire universe. Right. Without letting anyone else know. And, like, maybe it turned out better, like, in the little slideshow it gave you, maybe everything turned out for the better there, but overall, we don't really know. Like, I highly doubt everything was all happy-go-lucky after that. There probably would have been some troubles. So I also chose the destroy ending. One, because I did kind of want my shepherd to survive and go run off with Garrus, but also because it just felt like what you were trying to do the entire time. It felt like the true ending to me, and I almost feel like the game felt that too, which is why it kind of has that last minute from shepherd.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I guess that is the central topic whenever anyone brings up synthesis, is the issue of consent. Mm-hmm. The issue of not even just consent, but like lack of consent and lack of any warning whatsoever. And also it does feel a little, I mean, there are many things that could be considered space magic-y at that point, but I don't know if it was ever entirely clear why Shepard's quote-unquote essence was the thing that was needed to do synthesis. Like, could it have been any person? Could it have been, whatever?
Did it even need to be a person? Could you just grab like some dead body and like throw it in there? And like,
could you throw a husk? Could you throw a Geth? Could you throw?
Yeah. Could you throw that? Granted, he was an AI child, but could you throw a little child in there? Like
how many things could you chuck? And what would happen? Would a different host keep doing? Like, if you throw a Geth in there, does everybody turn into a Geth?
If I throw my dog in there, would everyone bark during the podcast? That's what happened. Don't do that. I love her.
So that is, I guess, it's like the main the main topic is the. And, obviously, like I said, I love the destroy ending, so I just tend to think, yeah, that's kind of like the be-all, end-all. You can't do all of that to people, especially people who might be patently opposed to implants. They might be the Catalyst kind of tries to make the point that, hey, Shepard, like, you have lots of implants, like, you were brought back to life in part by implants. It's like, well, that's you, but what if there's, like, some traditionalist person or a whole society, a whole planet of people that are patently opposed to it? And then, like, what happens after you force that on them? Does some person or some significant group of people, like, is there like some mass like suicide that happens? Like, it could get really dark of like people who are like, I can't live like this. Do you end up killing people indirectly? So those have been my general thoughts, but
yeah,
I do kind of have a bit of a devil's advocate in me that thinks, like, if you look at like modern day like real life comparisons, like, how long are we going to be able to keep going before somebody's just like, it doesn't make any sense not to take the help? It doesn't, at what point 100 years or 200 years in the future are people who refuse some sort of cybernetic enhancement, are those I mean, this is going to sound really controversial. I'm going to offend somebody, but are those people going to end up being like, vac deniers, like vaccine deniers? Like, at what point
I was thinking that too, to be honest.
At what point is it going to be so helpful that you're like, how could you not give your child the implant that's going to like correct their hearing or their vision or their motor functions? Like, how could you not?
I would say that the only difference between the anti-vax, because I'm sorry, if you're anti-vaxxer, I don't think we can be friends, because that's something I have really personal about. But like, the anti-vax movement is the one thing that's different about the cybernetic enhancement. Cybernetic enhancement, for the most part, it only affects you. Anti-vaxxers, if you're not vaccinated, and there's a bunch, like, you could pass that on. You could be in a carrier for that to someone who is not able to get the vaccine or whatever. It does affect others, where I don't think that's necessarily true. Well, although maybe it is. I don't know. Like, maybe there is a cybernetic enhancement where you can't get sick. I don't know. But yeah, I guess that's the difference I see, where anti-vaxxers, there is some element of, like, you can hurt other people, where cybernetics is so... At least in my mind, it really only affects one person. Although I guess, like, if you're a parent and you're like, oh, my kid's gonna have, be wheelchair bound, like there's like the one disease where, like, you can't move your entire body for the most part. The one that Stephen Hawking's had, ALS, is that it?
I think so.
Yeah, if you have that, but if you have the cybernetic enhancement, like, that wouldn't affect you. Like, of course, when no one's actually born with ALS or right out of the womb, so that's more of an adult decision. But in a way, we kind of have that argument now with I took a deaf culture class when I was in college, and, like, the deaf people are very against cochlear the implants you put in your head that I can't pronounce. Starts with the C.
Cochlear implants?
That's it. They're really against it because it takes away their culture. So how many of, like, the deaf, maybe even blind people, I don't know, how many kind of small cultures would we be accidentally getting rid of with even with just a synthetic ending, like it's suddenly people will be able to hear again or see again, walk again. Like my husband did a commercial kind of thing for a wheelchair basketball thing. Like if they were able to walk again, they wouldn't need a whole team. But a lot of them put like their life into this wheelchair basketball stuff. So getting rid of all of that, suddenly like those people would be like, oh well, I kind of liked my old life. Like
that is, I don't know, profoundly interesting. Like honestly, like the fact like deaf culture and the wheelchair, like you're right. I'm sitting here like I might need a couple of days to process that. That is profoundly interesting. And
that's one thing I realized. If you in your college or wherever have a chance to take sign language, do it. One, because like I have surprisingly actually used it just in my day-to-day life. You do come around deaf people. And two, it's really interesting to see their argument for why you shouldn't give your children cochlear implants, to be like, well, there's going to be an open, like, as long as you're willing to like learn sign language with your child, like they will have a community that will automatically love them and support them. And this is something that's really like, it really is a part of their whole personhood, is this deaf and deaf culture. So
it is very interesting. I've known a couple of people who are at least partially deaf, and I've been sort of exposed to kind of like, yeah, that idea of taking pride in who you are because of that, not feeling sorry for yourself. And one of the things that's very interesting that someone told me about potentially having some sort of hearing device, it was very interesting because I'd never heard anyone say this. It's like, if you have something like that, people do tend to sometimes feel sorry for you. And the comparison that they made, which absolutely floored me, I thought it was stunning, was that nobody feels sorry for you if you wear glasses. Mm-hmm. And I thought, how incredibly interesting. And it's all based on the name, because glasses are a seeing aid, but we don't call it a seeing aid. We call hearing devices a hearing aid. And if we had some other name for it, like sound, or I don't know what the equivalent is of glasses, right? Like, but it's just, perhaps there wouldn't be such a stigma around it. And I think that's also part of it. And so, yeah, that is like a really interesting aspect of the synthesis, or of any sort of like implant, cybernetic implants, is, yeah, you take away a culture from people who have actually gone beyond just making peace with that. They've actually started to identify with it.
Mm-hmm. Which because I can already see the comments, there's going to be a lot of people like, well, maybe the people in the culture currently are going to be sad that like the way of life is ending, but wouldn't it be better for the new generation to not know strife and not have to even need the culture, and they're just accepted to the culture in large? And you know, maybe I think it's the small picture versus the big picture. Like maybe in the big picture, it would be better to not have anyone who's deaf, like they'd be able to fit into the bigger world. But like, you do have to say, like, isn't it sad we do lose this very interesting and rich culture of like deaf history or blind or whatever, like any disability? Like that is a loss. We are losing something with the synthesis ending,
right?
So
I think so. Kind of. It's kind of going away from AI a little bit, but I'm kind of trying to bring it back, because I think it's another interesting distinction between Mass Effect Original Trilogy and Andromeda. When we started to talk about the like anti-vax stuff, or also, I mean, we could even get into what if I'm referencing this correctly, is it gene splicing, or like the like before the baby's born, they can go in and change some of the stuff about DNA. Like they're talking about getting rid of the
I don't know what the science name of it, but
yeah. So I don't know it either. But basically, like being able to like make slight genetic alterations before the child is born to sort of like identify and get rid of precursors for certain diseases, heart disease, whatever, things that are genetic diseases. It's like, yeah, maybe there are some risks involved, but if you don't do that, what greater risk is there? They have that little side quest where you get to talk to that couple in the original Mass Effect trilogy, where it's the mother and her husband died, and it's his brother. Mm-hmm. That started off in Mass Effect 1, and they carry that decision. You know, you run into their little side conversations in the trilogy. I thought that was super interesting. I mean, that's like such a side conversation. I'm not kidding. I sat there for like 30 minutes trying to decide what I should suggest to them. Mm-hmm. And that's like, I mean, let's be honest, that's like a direct analog to the vaccine thing. I mean, that's pretty much social commentary right up front.
Pretty much.
I'm really disappointed that they didn't do something like that with AI in Andromeda. Like, I really felt like they could have dealt with that very directly, as far as like, do the Milky Way races need some sort of implants going forward to keep up in Andromeda, or don't they? And what are the pluses and minuses of that. Instead, it was just, no, Sam's awesome. There's no drawback to having Sam. You'd be stupid not to have Sam. You can't get rid of him. And I just feel like that would have been a really cool sort of like gut-wrenching decision, or like another big BioWare pro-con, which side are you on kind of a thing that they missed out on.
Yeah, which I think is kind of the tragedy of Andromeda, where there is a lot of potential there, but this, because of the 1 year time limit or whatever it was, it just kind of did not happen because they were just so scrambling to find something slightly presentable. But here's a question I wanted to pose. So the voice actress which fun facts, the voice actress for Sam is the same voice actress for Calpurnia and Dragon Age Inquisition. Ta-da! But, her performance was very computer-like, which I don't think is her fault. Like, I think that is what she was directed to do. And versus EDI's, which is, even though it had a computer twinge to it, there was a lot of humanity there. Do you think our vision of Sam being a lot less human is because of the voice direction?
You know, I never thought of that. I do think that it's interesting that you mentioned Edie. Tricia Helfer, I feel like her performance, it must be conscious. I have to imagine it's deliberate. At least to me, starts to sound progressively more human. Mm-hmm. Like as she goes, it's the intonations and like the little inflections, even the speech patterns, even when it's right up front, and it's kind of funny how she starts to pull like mannerisms and colloquialisms, especially from Joker. So she definitely gets more human. I actually found Sam's voice to be quite pleasant. I actually enjoyed it all the way through, and so
I'm not saying it was bad. It was very computerized, so I didn't know if that drew back the human. And another thing to question is because Sam didn't actually have a face. Like, it had a ball, but the ball didn't really do anything. Like, even Legion, it had like eyebrows and like a couple of facial expressions, where Sam was just kind of floating orb, does nothing. So if they had given Sam, like when you go talk to it, like maybe it changes color, or maybe it like shrinks in size or something to kind of give it a body language, would we then attribute more humanity to it?
So that actually makes me think of a couple of different things, which is one that I think Sam is kind of stuck in the middle in a sense between being more human or being like strictly speaking AI, and sort of like proud of that in a way. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of impossible because he has a symbiotic relationship with Ryder. He's kind of designed to be the bridge or the in-between. But then you mentioned his physical representation, which to me makes me think of the way that AI are handled in the Halo franchise, in the Halo series, where each artificial intelligence chooses a sort of distinct look. Some of them choose historical figures. Some of them choose some from Greek mythology. Cortana has her specific look. And there's one particular AI which became one of my favorites from the Kilo 5 series of novels by Karen Travis in the Halo series, called BB, or Black Box. And he is very proudly AI, and so his physical representation is a black cube. And he's very adamant about the fact that, like, I'm not going to mimic a human. I'm not going to make myself look like a human. Like, I'm an AI, and that's it.
That brings up something that just came up to my mind. But what if Sam had a side quest and it was a lot like that, and also Cole's side quest in Dragon Age Inquisition, where you try to influence if Sam became more human-like or more AI-like?
That first one, that is brilliant. Two, I almost feel bad about how many good ideas we're coming up for that should have been in Andromeda, because it's making it worse. Like, I have this urge to replay Andromeda again, and I'm just like, why isn't it better?
I want to come back to this because I also have the same urge, and I'm having a hard struggle with it. But I just love this idea of, like, what if, like, we could, like, kind of what you were saying with the black box, we can encourage Sam to take a face or keep the ball shape. Like, no, like, we should be one, we should be human, everyone should be human, humans, great, human. Or Sam, be yourself, you can do whatever the fuck you want. If you want to be a ball or a cube or a what's on my desk, a ruler, like, do whatever you want. So that would have been so cool. Which, again, coming back to, we feel bad about saying all these cool ideas for Andromeda, we've been, like, we really only talk extensively on these podcasts, and I say we've had maybe 2 good podcasts, including this one, talking about Mass Effect Andromeda stuff. We talked about it for 2 hours, and we have better ideas than they had in a year. Like,
we're 5 episodes in, and I think we've like fixed half of Andromeda's lack of like depth and substance.
Yeah, like, granted, you might be able to say, like, oh, well, it's kind of already been done with Cole versus Spirit or whatever, because I do think there is some similarities in the argument of is Spirit's people in the Dragon Age series, but at the same time, like, girl, something better than nothing. Like, it's still an interesting theory. Maybe it has a different skin on it. You've already done it before, but, like, it is still interesting to think about.
And also, using that analogy or borrowing from the more spirit-like or more human-like sort of choice, doing that with AI adds a whole nother layer to AI, because I really feel like the dichotomy or the choice between AI throughout Mass Effect is more like good or bad, like can they be trusted or can they not? But if you look at the progression of AI, whether it's Legion, whether it's Sam, whether it's EDI, it's always sort of like it's very linear. It's always sort of framed in such a way that that AI becoming more organic is the correct thing. And I especially feel like with Legion, there should have been the case made that, like, well, why is organic necessarily better, and could you invert or could you subvert people's expectations about machine-like or synthetic? Being more synthetic isn't necessarily bad. Maybe for certain individuals, their identity is more fulfilled being more synthetic.
That would have been really interesting if, like, because at least in my memory, the whole Geth thing was they were one collective, and making them more organic would split all the units apart. What if, after all this happened, maybe, I don't know if you'd be able to even explore this in Mass Effect 3 or what, I don't remember in the timeline of what happens. What if a couple of them says, no, I don't like being one unit, I want to go back to being collective, when then the Geth have like a civil war of collective versus individual? Like, that would be something interesting to explore. I don't know how you'd be able to do that in Andromeda or whatever, but yeah, this more argument towards machine being okay on its own, and like you don't have to be organic, I think would have been a really interesting way to take. Which maybe that is what they were going, because, well, not really. I don't know, I'm thinking of the Angaran being technically a made species.
Yeah.
So, and if they are kind of organic AI in a way, because like there was something weird with like past lives, maybe like that's them downloading memories or transferring the AI or something like that. I don't know.
I think also, like, all of these ideas that we've kind of touched on, if you put them together, they become kind of synergistic. Like, if you make the dichotomy, like, synthetics becoming more synthetic or becoming more human-like, and then you talk about the cybernetic implant issue and the synthesis issue, it's sort of like you have all the way organic, with the organic species being purest or encouraging synthetics to become more organic. Then you've got synthetic beings becoming more synthetic, and then you have the middle of like human beings who want to have cybernetics and be in the middle. Like, I feel like all of those become more impactful together.
Now, you mentioned Deus Ex, and I want to ask about it because I have not played it. Is that the plot of Deus Ex? Because I have no idea.
Yes, I was sitting here going like, did I mention Deus Ex? I think I did.
Yeah, I think you meant, I already forgot what the thing is. Everyone can rewind, but I can't rewind my time. But yeah, you mentioned it. I'm assuming you played it. I have not. I just know there's some sort of like implant-based plot, but I didn't know if like we're saying all these cool things and the reason they didn't go with it because, oh, that's just Deus Ex. So
yes, a little bit. And so that's actually so interesting because I wanted to bring up Deus Ex. I played, the original and Deus Ex 2 back in the day, obviously. I never played Deus Ex Human Revolution, and I never played the sequel to Human Revolution until recently. I'm actually kind of in the middle of a Human Revolution playthrough. Okay. I love it. It's a little bit older now, so I guess it's from like 2011 or something, but it's like just really, really deep branching storylines and conversation wheel. Anyone, for whatever reason, if you're a fan of Mass Effect and Bioware games, and for whatever reason you're like me, you just skipped out on Human Revolution, go play it. Because the dialogue trees and branches are very deep, and there's great variety in how plots conclude and how you can handle missions. So you would love it. But yeah, they do deal with this head on, which is like, what is humanity? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to have these implants? Is it good? Is it bad? There's an element of class involved, right? Because of like the money involved. There's all these different things. So yeah, I imagine that maybe BioWare was mindful of that, but especially because BioWare has the element of like these really super intelligent artificial intelligences that you create relationships with. I feel like it would have been distinct because of the relationships you can build with AI characters.
Okay. I will take your word for it because I haven't played the game, but it kind of sounds to me like you're saying, like, even though Deus Ex touched upon it, Mass Effect, or this new Mass Effect, Andromeda would have had a interesting take on it.
Deus Ex does it in a... it's hard to describe. I guess they just do it in a very Deus Ex way. Like, playing through it, it's vaguely similar, but it's also
like defining
distinct.
a word with the word. Deus Ex is very Deus Ex.
Yeah, exactly. What else was it? Okay, so... There's, I guess, a couple of other things that I should mention, at least briefly. Well, let me mention this now, because it's probably the best segue. The Zatiel, right? And we kind of briefly touched on this in pre-show. Like, So the Zatiel, we were talking about, like, all of the different AI things that we should include, like which characters and which, the Geth, et cetera, et cetera. I guess we haven't really talked about the Reapers too much. I guess we could in a way, although ultimately aren't the Reapers just...
They're like, or they're almost like the synthetic ending, but you also bring up the reason why I didn't like the synthetic ending. We essentially became the Reapers, but prettier.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
Because that's what Reapers are, right? They're like an entire species or an entire planet sort of forced into this.
What if, tinfoil fan theory time, what if things weren't actually prettier, but our synthetic eyes are making it look like that?
Oh, that's like real. What's it called? What was the theory again? The indoctrination theory.
Oh yeah. It's been so long since I've even looked at it that maybe that is a part of the indoctrination theory. I don't remember. It
would fit very well, right? Like basically, we are making that human Reaper, but once you do it, it looks like something prettier. You're right. But yeah, Reapers, I don't know, for some reason Reapers don't feel like the traditional, like they don't struggle with that notion of, does this unit have a soul? Like, to what degree should I alter my programming to become more organic? Because they were sort of crafted purposefully to change an entire organic civilization into this thing. So I kind of feel like they wouldn't struggle with that same...
That would have been interesting if they went there, but at the same time, that would have humanized the Reapers, which I don't think they really wanted to go in that direction. So... Yeah.
So I guess maybe before we touch on the Zatiel, because there's not too much there, we don't know much about them, but like I guess since we're kind of touching on the Reapers, the Catalyst. I mean, the Catalyst certainly is an AI created by the Leviathan. That is such an interesting and complex story that I don't think sometimes gets as much analysis as it deserves. I remember at one time I wrote up this whole huge long thing about the Leviathan, but yeah, I mean, they basically did create an AI that to me the Catalyst essentially fails, right? The Catalyst was essentially made to keep the Thrall species that served the Leviathan safe, and somehow arrived at the conclusion that it should destroy them all periodically in order to keep them safe. I don't know. Is the Catalyst a good AI? Like, is it interesting, or does it feel shallow to you?
I guess my first question... I didn't know about the Leviathan until I was looking up the DLC, because I think they only really talk about the Leviathan in the Leviathan DLC, don't they?
For the most part, and they added... That DLC adds... maybe like 2 dialogue options to the final conversation, because you can ask the Catalyst about them.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Well, see, I didn't have... The only DLC I had was the one for Javik and the one for the big fan service party. Yeah, that one. That's the only ones I've had, plus any free ones. So I think that's really shitty of Bioware to have that really interesting story and almost necessary story locked away in DLC, but whatever, that's not what we're talking about. The Catalyst, to me, one, why did it take the form of a little boy? Which maybe that's just like because Shepard was like really had some trauma with the little boy. But why would they choose to do that other than like, don't shoot me, I'm something precious? It felt very manipulative, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, literally no one knows. Like, that is honestly one of the things that they never address, and it's super annoying because it's infuriatingly dumb.
I guess how I read it, because I went into the series like well after all the drama, I just was like, well, I know this part's gonna be shit, but let's whatever. It felt kind of manipulative to me that like, oh, I'm gonna be something that's been disturbing to you. I'm going to be the children you've seen die. That would kind of like maybe stay the hand of you trying to destroy it or whatever. Because I think when you go towards the destroy ending, doesn't it like beg you to not do that? I can't remember now.
The little apparition of the little ghost child, star child, sort of appears at the bottom of the ramp, and it doesn't necessarily beg, but it kind of like states its case again of like, why are you doing this, blah blah blah.
Yeah, so I think that moment, the fact that it took the form of a little boy, it's something that had been bothering my character. That felt so manipulative that was like, anything you say after this, I'm not going to listen to because you're trying to manipulate me. I see through that. And I don't like that. I don't appreciate that. So
that's actually...
I guess I would say it's evil then.
Yeah, and that's actually even more interesting because the Leviathan were a mind-controlling species. Like I feel like that's one of the things that's really overlooked about the Leviathan, and
I did not know that.
Vis-a-vis in about the Catalyst is that the Leviathan were not a good species. Like they were not. They basically enslaved the entire galaxy through mind control, through some sort of organic mind control, and they created the Catalyst because essentially they had mind control abilities over all of the lesser races, but it wasn't, some of them were not totalitarian. They required tribute. So basically they were controlled, but they had enough autonomy to have some sort of economy of their own, they produced for the Leviathan. And so in being productive thrall species and productive slave races, they created AI, and then the AI kept destroying them. And so the Leviathan being semi-benevolent, we're like, well, we don't really care about if we cared about them, we wouldn't treat them as slaves, but we care about them enough that we want to protect our slaves from themselves. That's why they created the Catalyst, which was to solve that problem somehow, which is like, there's so many ways you can criticize that of like, we have a problem with our slave species making this mistake of creating AI to solve their problems, so we're going to create an AI to solve our problems. It's problematic in and of itself. But yeah, so basically the Catalyst was essentially, I mean, this is going to sound kind of harsh, or maybe it's like not the proper comparison, but kind of as like a slave master AI. It's like, hey, we're going to create this AI to keep our slave races in check. I never found it to be a compelling argument that somehow the Catalyst is good. It's like, no, you exist because the Leviathan wanted to enslave the galaxy, and that was backfiring on them. The amount of autonomy that they were giving to their slave species led to the production of AI races that were destroying them. And if they fully dominated the thrall species, that was kind of like indoctrination. It sort of shortens their lifespan, or at some point it completely dumbs them down. So they couldn't do that either. And so the Catalyst was sort of made to like manage them. And so coming back to your original point about the little boy and it being manipulative, that just clicked in my brain of like, oh yeah, the Catalyst is meant to help keep slave species in check. Subtle psychological manipulation would be the way to do that, other than like the overpowering organic mind control of the Leviathans. So what you said, like that totally clicked for me of like, oh yeah, that's what the Catalyst was meant to do, was manipulate people into doing what it wants.
I'm glad I accidentally had the correct assumption then when I was playing the game like 4 years ago.
Your instincts are correct.
Yes. We're running out of time, so I quickly want to talk about it. Just because I think it's good to air this out on the air. You said you're having trouble going back into Andromeda.
A bit, yeah.
Why are you having trouble? Because I'm having the same thing.
Well, it's a combination of things. Number one, it's just a classic, like, I'm a nerd, I'm a gamer, and I overload my rotating wheel of games that I'm playing. So I'm playing, like I said, Deus Ex Human Revolution. I'm playing Divinity 2, which just came out, which is
same,
quite fun. And I couldn't fully get into the first Divinity. I liked it, but it's just been a while since I've played isometric RPGs and stuff like that, and CRPGs. Divinity 2 is a little more accessible. I appreciate the fact that it's fully voice acted, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I like sports games because I played sports when I was younger, so I'm also playing NBA 2K, the new one. And so like all of that, trying to play all of that, and then it's like, oh yeah, Andromeda. I was in the middle of a second playthrough / third playthrough, and so that's partly it. And then I have forever been meaning to make a video about this, but Andromeda has a really, really bad pacing problem. And I feel like sometimes this might be something that I do as part of the Relay series. People complain about like quote unquote bad writing or quote unquote bad plot, and they don't sort of have the training or the skills to identify specifically what that means or what that is. Andromeda has a very specific pacing issue around Havarl and Vold. When you get to that sort of open where you can sort of choose which one to go to first, you kind of have some autonomy. It's a sort of semi-branching, semi-open world part of the game. They really lose the pacing at that point. There basically is no pacing. It's sort of this void without urgency, without clarity about where you should go, and it's meant to make you feel like you have openness and freedom, but instead makes you feel like nothing is important and you're doing a bunch of fetch quests. And then on top of that, the world designed for those two planets is really bland and really not interesting. And when I get to that point in the game, I just go, okay, I could spend the next hour getting through these quests, or I could go play Deus Ex Human Revolution and see like really interesting quests that have a lot of branching, etc.
See, my problem is, I guess it is also based in the pacing, but another thing I'm having trouble with is that I just can't, this could be really shallow, I just can't get past the character creator, because I feel like no matter what I do, it's not mine in a way, and that really bothers me a little bit. Like, even though I'm like pumping those mods in, like something about it, I'm just like, this, the facial structure just looks so like, it's still, I feel like no matter what you do in the character creator, the facial structure still just looks like the base head. Like, nothing you can do can fuck with it. And so, like, I tried to just roll the character I had to begin with, which, so I upgraded my computer in between when I first played it and now.
Oh, nice.
And my graphics were so shitty on the first computer that it looked different. So I was like, oh, this doesn't look like anyone else's, because it looked like she had a pixel for a head. But when I put it onto the new one, pixel head, I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. But when I put it in the new one, it just looks like I've seen 10 of those, and it kind of says, oh, well, this isn't my story, this is everyone else's story. So it kind of, that bothers me. But then also it is, as much as I do like the beginning, it's such a slog to get through, because it's just like, oh, and you can't save through any of the main missions, so you really have to you really just have to do a marathon playthrough of like the prologue, and I think the first time you're able to save is like well after you wake up from the AI stuff. So
yes, that is true. And yeah, the character creator is kind of a thing. I will say, for people that have watched the 4K playthrough that I've uploaded, if you just do default male writer with a couple of mods, he does look way better, especially if you remove the stubble or you alter the stubble. There's a couple of mods that make the stubble look actually sort of handsome and not like kind of like hobo-ish.
Yeah.
Also, I sent you a link for the Rebel
I just saw that.
writer complexion. That's a pretty good female writer. That is one where, if the next time I do a female playthrough, I'm probably going to use that mod.
That does look like a nice complexion. A lot of the complexions sometimes you see make them look like plastic Barbie dolls, and that drives me crazy. But this one actually looks nice.
Yeah. And then if you add some of the tattoo mods, it's actually quite good.
I wanted to add a tattoo mod. I just couldn't find one that I was in love with. Although the one here with the moth looks pretty cool. Is this new? When did this come out?
I think it was around when I started my other playthrough a few months ago, but I think it's updated now. I'm not sure.
I must have missed this one. Well, that one, I'll check that one out. Anyway, let's talk about the Zatiel.
Yeah, I do feel like some people kind of forgot about the Zatiel, and we don't know much about them.
I forgot about the Zatiel.
There's really just the one conversation where Javik is commenting on the Geth and in a larger respect on the Reapers, and mentions that there was this ancient synthetic race called the Zatiel, and they were formed from an ancient race, one of the, if I'm not mistaken, one of the subjugated races, or maybe it was a race called the Za. So there was the Za, and they chose to begin to enhance themselves with cybernetic implants and AIs inside their brains, and this formed the Zatiel, which I guess just means like artificial or synthetic Za. And this is what started the what was it called? The Metacon War. And that was like the big war. That was like the Quarian Geth war before the Reapers started their harvest in during the Prothean cycle. And it's interesting because it really forms a lot of Javik's views on synthetics, which is just like, purely speaking, synthetic is bad, synthetic races are bad, you should wipe out these Geth, shoot them out the airlock kind of a thing. But I just thought it was interesting that like the Zatiel were a race, unlike the Quarians who made robot slaves, they chose willingly to start incorporating these cybernetics and these AIs into themselves. And it specifically, I think it specifically says in the Codex entry, or Javik maybe also mentions it, that the fact that they had that is what made the Reapers able to come in and start. They took them over very early. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was even... Yeah, I think it is basically insinuated, or either maybe even directly stated, that the Reapers started the Metacon War sort of furtively or clandestinely, because they were affecting the Zatiel without the Protheans and the Zatiel knowing that it was the Reapers who were doing it. So they started the Metacon War to weaken the Protheans first, and then once the Protheans were involved in this war with the Zatiel, that's when the Reapers started their full-scale invasion. It was basically like an analog for the Geth conflict being followed up by the Reapers.
That's interesting. I vaguely remember Javik mentioning this, but it didn't really, I don't remember any of these interesting details.
It becomes, I guess, like a good counter argument to what we were talking about earlier with the synthetic ending. Like, if you were to say, like, no, synthesis would be good, and like, or the Deus Ex sort of viewpoint of like, well, it's all sort of heading that way anyway. I guess the Reapers, or you could say even like the Jordan and Andromeda, et cetera, if there's a hyper powerful synthetic race out there somewhere, are you making yourself susceptible to hacking, essentially, to being reprogrammed? However, there is also the argument to be made that the Leviathan were mind controlling people through some sort of biology.
Yeah, I was going to say, chemical weapons, granted, there's nothing, as extreme as mind control something, or, anything that makes you go crazy, but, there are ways that people wage war via chemicals and biology. So, it's not exactly a new concept to say, if you were synthetic, you'd be susceptible to attacks. Well, you are, same for biology, but I feel like with synthetics, because it's completely man-made, you understand it better, so it's easier to make the I'm going to call them viruses, the computer viruses, to make you be mind-controlled. So I guess you could say that the Leviathan were able to mind-control everyone through biology, but it seems like, at least in the history we know, in the history of the Mass Effect universe and then the Javik, they were the only ones to be able to do that we know of. So in this long history, there was only one race that was able to do that versus a bunch of them that were able to hack the AI.
Yeah, that's also really true. Yeah, and besides, biology is a sensitive thing. I mean, if we as humans, in real life, actually acknowledged how much our neurochemistry and how much sleep patterns and dietary effects actually affected our mood and what we think of as our personality, oh my God, we would realize that we're like little machines being fucked with by you have too much sugar, you don't have enough sleep, you have these weird emotional spikes during blah blah blah. It's
And a lot of medicine, my parents are in the medical field, and a lot of the times, I'll ask a question Mom, Dad, why is X or Y happening? And they're oh, I don't know. And I'm well, you guys don't know? I'm no, in medical knowledge, we have no idea how, the brain works, or, a bunch of other things. And there's a lot of medicine out on the market. There's one non-prescription medication that's really common. I can't remember what it is now, but no one really knows how it works. It just does. It just makes the headaches go away, and no one really knows why. There's just a couple of things that we take in our body daily that it does work, but we don't know why. I mean,
and not only that, but there's drugs that have become insanely popular. Viagra was supposed to be what, blood pressure or something?
Yeah, some people actually take Viagra not just to Like, if they have thin blood, I think they'll just take it to, like, help the blood not be as thin. So actually, some people are prescribed Viagra even if they're female, not to just get boners. So, yeah, it was started out with being a blood thickener, maybe, or a blood thinner. I don't know. There was something with the blood. And then they're like, oh, this gives men boners. Let's remarket it and throw it over there.
It's like, yeah, this weird side effect, that's not a flaw. That's a feature. We got $1 billion product on our hands.
And it works because we're able to say about, like, how many prescription drugs can you just, like, rattle off the name? Like, Viagra is really one of the few.
Yeah.
So.
And on that note, folks...
Thanks for joining us. Talking about boners.
Right, like AI, like what it means to be human. Does this unit have a soul? Anti-vax. What role do synthetics have in our future? And dick pills.
Yeah.
That's the level of intellectual discourse that we get to here.
We're doing good. I have to ask before I end, though, what race did you play in Divinity?
Human. Yeah, I went kind of boring.
I always play elf because that's my whatever. And what do you think? I don't know if you've come across this, the elves being cannibals.
Cannibals, but like not zombie cannibals, but like they get the memories by eating body parts.
Yeah. At first, that really was like, ooh, that's weird, but I'm kind of warming up to it. And it's kind of a cool mechanic. And anyway, guys, if you are looking for something to fill your heart and you love fantasy games and you don't know what to do before the next Dragon Age, check out Divinity. I'm having a lot of fun. And this is the first time I've played a fantasy game in a while. And I'm like, the fun is happening. It's been forever since this has happened. Anyway, so I think with that, shall we say goodbye?
Yeah, I think we're good to wrap up. If people want to find me, still really no Twitter I'm on Reddit under my personal account, but really just look for me on YouTube under the Exalted March.
Mm-hmm. And you can find me on YouTube as Ghildirthalen. I'm actually on Twitter at Ghildirthalen, and then I'm on Reddit as Gillanon. So PM me if you want to suggest a topic. We would love to hear from you guys. All right, and with that, Daresh Shiral.